Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. If you were looking for America's first sake podcast, you found it. You've also found me, John Puma of the Sake Notes. I am one of your hosts and the administrator over at the Internet Sake Discord, as well as the Reddit r/sake community.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I am a sake samurai, I'm a sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and chatting about all things sake and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand. Yes.
Welcome back, Tim.
Yes, and this week we are going to be venturing again into the world of sake vessels and accoutrement, which is a big accoutrement. Vessels.
Okay, so we got sake vessels and accoutrement.
Sake cups and tchotchkes, and I love it all. I have too much of
right.
it. So what
fantastic.
What are some of the vessels we talked about on the show before? We had Kiki Choco, the standard sake tasting cup with the blue rings at the bottom recently. Mm-hmm. We've done Ochoko. We've done Masu, the square wooden box. And we also did the Sakazuki, the more ceremonial saucer-like shape. But today we're moving into the 20th century with some modern design.
Modern designs.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, when we did the Kiki Choco episode where we talked about that standard cup, and if, we describe it to you, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yes, absolutely.
It's very similar to the cup that we're going to be talking about today. Once you recognize this and you see it, you know a little bit about the designer, you're going to see it everywhere. It's a very common cup shape, don't you think?
It is. It's one that I see quite often, actually.
Well, maybe I can give our listeners a little bit of a description of the cup we're going to be looking at today.
Yeah.
And then, kind of unique situation, this week we actually have a little bit of a bio of the mid-century designer that designed this cup. And it has become such an icon that, as we said, you see it everywhere.
Yeah, it is a very, very common cup. And, up until we started doing our discussions about this episode, I didn't even know there was like a story behind it. So this has been a bit of a learning experience for me. Just finding out that there was a thing about it. So yeah, let's chat a little bit more. What is this cup that we are talking about?
Yes. So this is a clear glass cup. I often describe it as the mid-century footed cup. So it is like an upside down bell shape. So basically there is a thick solid glass foot for about an inch or inch and a half. And then it has a simple glass bowl on top of that. So It's a footed glass and it raises it up off the table just a little bit. It's not a stem. It's really like a foot. And this is a glass that was designed by a contemporary of Charles and Ray Eames and many other famous mid-20th century designers. His name is Sori Yanagi. He is very well known in Japan as an industrial designer, and he focused on the usefulness and beauty and simplicity of everyday objects. He's actually the son of a famous designer as well. His father was Soetsu Yanagi, who founded a movement that really celebrated the beauty of everyday objects. So he was born into this world where his father really dedicated his life to the crafts of Japan and kind of celebrating the beauty of the folk arts. So when he got into the post-war period, he became a designer himself. So he graduated from the Academy of Fine Arts in Japan and also studied at an architectural office. So he has background both in arts and architecture, but he ended up being one of the most famous industrial designers in Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And just like a lot of mid-century artists and craftspeople, some of his most famous furniture designs focus on bent plywood. So Charles and Ray Eames are really famous mid-century designers, and they did a lot of bent plywood in the late 40s and 50s. And his most famous furniture design is the butterfly stool. And that's actually in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art in New York, in the permanent collection. And we'll put a picture of Yanagi's butterfly stool in our show notes. Once you see it, if you're familiar at all with mid-century design or furniture, you'll probably recognize that right away. And he designed this sake cup as well. Again, it's a solid foot and a simple glass bowl, and it is all clear glass and just so beautiful on the table.
Yeah. Something I did not realize was a modern cup. I always thought of it as like being kind of classic, kind of like, a little bit older. So it's very interesting to me to hear this history about it, and that's really nice.
Yeah. I searched and I searched and I searched, and I could not find the year that Yanagi designed this cup. So I couldn't find a year. He was born in 1915 and he died in 2011. So he lived well into the 21st century, but was most active in the latter half of the 20th century. And this cup, from a sake lover's point of view, this cup is like, I don't know, it's a monumental contribution to the world of sake because it's so ubiquitous and so well loved. And it is a very modern design. Like, this is definitely a post-war period design, but very clean and very simple. And it follows his rules of design very clearly, where the simplicity of the object is to be celebrated. I actually have a quote from Sori Yanagi. He said, "Whether handcrafted or manufactured, a design is born from its connection to everyday life, and this is also the source of its true beauty."
I like it.
So he was very into designing for things that people touched every day, used every day, that were part of their everyday goings about in life. And nothing could be more indicative of that than a simple but beautiful sake cup.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. Now, I'm trying to think of like where and when I would have like first seen one of these. And it was probably in like a modern izakaya.
Yeah.
That seems like it would probably have been that situation. Probably a nice little set where they like pour the sake into like a nice like glass carafe, and then you get these to like pour into. Like, that is most likely when I first encountered these particular cups.
Yeah, they're wonderful to use at home too because they're totally stable. They hold a good amount of sake. They come in different sizes. I have a medium-sized one here. They can hold 4 ounces on the larger side or just a couple ounces on the smaller side. And so just really useful, utilitarian, but very beautiful.
It is so interesting that this was, that kind of organically, it seems, became such a common piece of glassware in a lot of izakayas and other sake establishments. Most of the other vessels that we've talked about so far have had roots in like the history of sake, and sake's like the masu is all about using it as a measuring tool for rice, and kiki choko being the official tool for tasting. So it's so interesting to me that this is just like, this is a thing that somebody made, and then independently so many places were like, we like this. This is what we're going to use. That's super interesting. It's fascinating.
Yeah, of all the vessels that we've featured so far, this was the first one that was designed in the post-war period. So after World War II. And it was designed, I think, really with consumers in mind. Like, this didn't come from the industry or some other thing. It was designed by an industrial designer with an eye on practicality, beauty, and the ease of use for the end user. That really speaks to why it became so popular. It was like, this designer, Sori Yanagi, was thinking of the people who are going to be sipping sake out of it. And
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know, I think that when you're designing something for people, who knew you should really focus on the people. And there he goes, doing just that.
Yeah, I mean, the drinking out of the masu, the square wooden box, is a lot of fun, but I don't think they took into consideration like ease of use when you're drinking out of a square wooden box.
I don't think that was. That was job one when they were putting that together.
Right. Yeah. So this glass is much more in line with that. And good news, folks. This design is so transcendent that it is still manufactured and produced today. The glass manufacturing company that produces this cup is called Toyo Sasaki, and they sell this to this day. I don't think it's ever gone out of production since it was designed in the mid-20th century. So you can still buy these cups, and they are wonderful to have on hand. They have that nice heavy base to them, a beautiful, simple bowl on top of that. And we're going to test it out today and compare it with our wine glass and see how we do, as we always do with our vessel series.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how it stacks up. Tim, so what sake did we choose today to be our testing companion in our little journey?
Yeah, we picked an interesting sake. This is a sake that I've never tasted before. So again,
makes two of us, Tim.
Yes, we're going to get a true blind react from our wine glass and our Yanagi footed cup. Mm-hmm. This sake also has a connection to another one of our episodes. We had the author Hannah Kirshner on our show. We profiled her and her book, Water, Wood, and Wild Things, which told the story of her life living in a Japanese mountain town. And in that book, she talked about working for a particular sake brewery, and that was Matsuura Shuzo, which is a small brewery in Ishikawa Prefecture. Mm-hmm. And they recently started exporting their sake. The brand is called Shishi no Sato. Mm-hmm. So this was the sake brand that Hannah Kirshner was making when she was working there and writing that book that we featured previously on Sake Revolution. So shout out to Hannah. And we finally have that sake in hand now that it's sold in the States, and we could not be more thrilled. So the sake that we have from Shishi no Sato brand is their Junmai Ginjo Shun. Mm-hmm. And this has an alcohol percentage of 14%, so it's a little bit lower than usual. This is Yamada Nishiki is the rice milled to 55%, and that's Yamada Nishiki grown in Hyogo Prefecture. The sake meter value is a -1. Acidity is at 1.6. The yeast is Kanazawa yeast number 14. And the Matsuura Shuzo is again in Ishikawa Prefecture. And so I'm really excited to taste this. And we're going to do our Yanagi footed glass versus our wine glass and see how they compare. All right, you ready to get started?
Before we do, I just want to say really quickly two things about this. One is, you mentioned that the Yamada Shiki that they're using over here in this Ishikawa brewery is from Hyogo. And I think that we have discussed in the past, I think specifically during our episode on Yamada Shiki, that Hyogo kind of known for having, growing the best Yamada Shiki in the country. So it's interesting that they're going ahead and bringing it over there to use in this product. I think that's super fun. And then I also was wondering, and this is probably an opinion thing, so I'm wondering what you think. Do you think that the reason that they started to export their sake at this time was the attention that may have gotten to them from the book?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I do wonder about that.
Yeah, well, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if Hannah's book kicked off the conversation with them about
Moved
exporting.
the needle a little bit.
Oh, for sure. And they may have wanted to export, and this was the motivation they needed to get that started when people reading her book say, oh, I want to try this sake. So we're super lucky to have this imported to the States now. And I have never had anything from this brewery, so I'm really excited to try it.
That makes two of us, Tim. I have also never had this. So let's open it up.
All right, we've got the sake poured both into a wine glass.
All right.
All right, so we've got the sake poured both into a wine glass and our Yanagi footed cup, the mid-century design cup. Where should we start, John?
I think we should get baseline and start with our guest cup. That's been the way we've been doing it. Yes. So we might as well continue.
All right. So I've got my Yanagi cup. Mm-hmm. You can see the sake very beautifully in this cup.
Oh, yeah.
Clear glass, beautiful solid glass foot. Let's take it to the nose and smell. Okay. It smells good. Mm-hmm. But similar to our Kiki Choco, I feel like some of the aroma is spreading out and not getting funneled to the nose like you would with a wine glass.
Possibly. I mean, when I look at this, and you mentioned that it has that thicker stem, the thicker short stem, almost like a stump, and then after that, it is a bowl. It sits on top of that. It does remind me in certain respects of a glass Kiki Choco for functional purposes, as far as like the top of the glass goes, like the part that you're actually taking in the aroma and where you're sipping from. It is just a straight round opening.
Yeah.
So it does have a little bit of that going on. I could see why you'd have a similar experience. I do feel like I'm getting a little bit more aroma than a Kiki Choco usually gives me, but this will be something we need to revisit when we take in the aroma from the wine glass, and we'll really see if we've been missing anything, right?
Yeah, I think your description was amazing, John, where you said it's like an Ochoko or a Kiki Choco on a foot. It's like there's a base on it and it's raised up off the table, but the bowl of the cup itself is very much just like a glass Ochoko. So there's no bowl to it, so to speak, where it's going to funnel aromas to your nose. It's open on the top, just kind of straight-sided.
Exactly. It's just it's just straight down.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, let's give it a taste out of the Yanagi footed glass.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
This is an interesting
That's
sake.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
This sake has a very nice savory component to it, and it's very rich and layered. There's a complexity here that's really interesting.
There is.
There's a little bit of fruitiness there as well, but it's like jam. It's like
it starts out a little sweet.
Yeah, it's like grape Smuckers. It's like Smuckers jam a little bit. Very.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah,
like it is. It
jammy.
starts off a little sweet, a little jammy, and then it kind of becomes dry. And it has that not completely, but almost that fall off the ledge dry finish at the end. But it's such an interesting place to go from this like jammy kind of sweetness, and then really nice. It's a really nice journey though.
Yeah, it tastes very high quality and very well structured.
All right, so this is really good stuff. That's nice.
Yeah, and there's also a little bit of a rice component there too. So it's like concentrated jammy fruit, very much preserved kind of grape jam to start off with, a little bit of sweetness. There's a hint of rice in there for me as well, and then a more savory dry finish. So it's like a journey. I feel like I've been taken on a journey.
Yes, yeah, I think we have. Now, while it's fresh in our minds, let's grab
Yes,
that
our
wine
wine
glass
glass.
and see what happens.
Okay, so we're now smelling out of the wine glass for comparison with our Shishi no Sato. Oh, wow. That's,
Yeah,
again, much more concentrated aroma, don't you
much more
think?
concentrated, but I don't think I'm getting a different aroma experience. I think there
No.
were a couple of situations with some of our other vessels where I was like, where was this aroma before? And in this case, I'm like, it's I had to search for the aroma before, but now
Yes.
it's just in my face.
Yes. It feels like it was the same aroma, but somebody turned up the volume. Like
Kind of, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it was there before out of the footed glass, but here with the wine glass channeling those esters, those aromas right to your nose, you get it right away.
Yeah, and it is right there and very nice. It's now that I'm not searching for the aroma, I can say it with a little more certainty.
Yeah.
That's a very nice aroma.
Yeah.
There is a touch of that sweetness that we tasted, that jammy sweetness on the nose, and a little bit of that rice, I think.
Yeah, and for me, I'm getting some fruitiness as well. But for me, it's smelling mostly like stone fruits when you think of like plums and apricots and that type of.
Right, which lends itself to the jam.
Yes, exactly.
Really nice. That's nice. It is that style of sake, and I think that this is maybe I have the bias. But it is autumn. This sake, and it might be that stone fruits, just makes me think autumn. Like I feel like as I sip this, that I'm having this in the best time of year for this sake.
Yeah. So this you're telling me this is a sake you'd want to have on a hayride? Through the haunted
It's been
forest.
a long time since I've been on a hayride, Tim. They're bouncy. It's hard to drink sake on a hayride, I would think. I think. But perhaps, maybe I'm sitting watching somebody else on a hayride. I'm kind of sitting there. There's some pumpkins around.
Yeah. You're leaf peeping in Vermont.
There's hay in the vicinity.
Yes. You're sitting on a hay bale.
There you go. I can sip
Watching
this
the
sake on a
leaves
hay
change
bale.
color.
That's not bad. I could think of worse ways to spend my day.
All right. Let's give it a taste out of the wine glass.
Speaking of concentrated,
Yeah.
yeah. And it might be because the aroma is going in with it, but
Yeah.
I think I'm getting a much louder, as you pointed out earlier, like it seems like they turned up the volume. I'm getting a louder version of this sake. It's the fidelity. The fidelity is definitely higher. Out
Ultra
of the wine
HD.
glass. Yes, it's
8K HD.
It's HD.
Yeah. Can I say I actually enjoyed sipping it more from the footed glass?
Really, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
The aroma was more enjoyable from the wine glass, but just sipping on it, I felt that it moderated the amount that hit my palate at once. It wasn't such a concentrated kaboom of that jammy flavor on my palate. And
There is a kaboom.
I enjoyed the sipping from the footed glass just a little bit more. Of course, you can't beat a wine glass. That's why it's what we compare everything to, right? We use a wine glass all the
Rename
time.
the show the Wine Glass Challenge. Can you beat the wine glass?
We can't use the W word.
Oh my goodness.
No. Snip,
I understand what you mean, though. It is a lot more subtle out of the Yanagi class, but I kind of like how loud it is out of the wine glass. I kind of I'm enjoying just that it is not shy, and it is a big as we described earlier, that jammy flavor. Like really nice. I like it.
I do have to say one thing, regardless of which glass we're using. This is 14% alcohol, and it has a bigger footprint than that. I'm not saying it tastes boozy in any way, but I'm just saying it's like, here I am. Like it is a richer, bolder style. And with a lower alcohol percentage, I just expected it to be quieter.
You're absolutely right. That's an excellent point. And I wasn't even thinking about the alcohol percentage when I was sipping on it. And yeah, like when you sip on this, you would think it had normal or high alcohol. And, seeing here that it is actually a low alcohol, 14% is considered low alcohol sake, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, it's only 1% off, 1.5% off of a usual.
They consider like Natsu to be like a low alcohol sake, and usually those are around 14%. So that's why I was kind of rolling with that. But yeah, so it's a slightly lower alcohol sake, but it doesn't taste that way at all. It tastes, it is not pulling any punches. It's got a big fun flavor.
Yeah, it has a richness to it.
Yeah,
for sure. So John, we've used a number of different vessels over our series so far. How do you think this Yanagi footed cup is going to fit into your repertoire? Do you think it's something you'll reach for more often now, or not that much?
I think something that we learned here today was that it can be utilized to tone down your louder, your bigger sakes, those bigger flavor explosions. You want something that's a little bit more subtle. You can use this cup, and it seems to have that effect.
Yeah, you can throttle the clutch a little bit. Listen to me making a car metaphor.
Look at that's impressive, Tim.
Yeah, that's something we haven't talked about, and it's kind of a good learning experience from this tasting. Is that if the sake might be more exuberant than you'd like for a given pairing or a given experience, you can moderate that with the type of cup that you use. And we've always talked about how the wine glass allows us to get the aroma better, but maybe you want to dial back the impact of the flavor. And one of these alternate sake cups can do that. So it's a really interesting takeaway from today.
Yeah. And I think that all of our other experiences so far have been so, I feel like I'm missing something. Or something like that. Or, this is interesting, but the wooden masu adds flavor to it and changes the dynamic in that way. And this is the first one that it's just like, this is a tool. Like this can be used as a tool to bring the sake to a place that you, that is more towards your taste, perhaps. If you have something that is a little bit, a bit louder and you want to have a little bit more of a subtle experience, this seems like a really good opportunity.
I think if we had picked a different sake to try with this cup, we would have had a different experience. So
absolutely.
It's always the marriage of the sake and the vessel together.
Right.
So we're just having fun experimenting with different sakes and seeing how it works. But everyone at home really needs to try their sakes with their favorite cups and see what works for them and what they like best. It's all about your personal preference.
Yeah, really good stuff.
All right. Well, John, it's great to taste with you. Thanks for exploring the history of this great designer with me. Again, that's Sori Yanagi. And in the show notes on sakerevolution.com, we're going to have photos of this beautiful footed cup along with some of Yanagi's other really famous furniture designs. So be sure to check the show notes. I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in, and a special hello and thank you to all of our patrons. We love our community on Patreon. And if you would like to join us and support Sake Revolution, please visit patreon.com/sakerevolution to learn more.
And if you would like to support us in other ways, you can. There's great ways to do it. You can go to Apple Podcasts or whatever your podcast platform of choice might be, Spotify, Chartable, et cetera, and leave us a review. Tell people about your experience watching Sake Revolution. That's going to help get word out about our show. So, on that note, Tim, I hope you've got a glass handy.
I sure do. I have many glasses. I have to pick one.
All right. For everybody at home or wherever you're listening to our show, please grab your sake vessel of choice, Remember to keep drinking sake and come
Kampai.
Woohoo!